I'm still getting over the insufferable Natalie Holt, if I'm honest. Right. Right. So I'm joined here by Joe Wall from Joyful Wealth and Benjamin Mitchell from Headsup Wealth. So as... oh, I've gone the wrong way. Oh, it's all fallen apart. Right, forget that. Insufferable, that's what it is. Right, so I'm here with Benjamin and Joe, and I think Ed and Gordon kind of set the scene really nicely in terms of they talked about consolidation, even if Ed doesn't like that word. They talked about M&A, and they talked about, I guess, in defence of large firms, what maybe some large firms do well. So maybe we'll just pick up where we left off before the break, and kind of just speak to you guys about how much or not that resonates with you. So I know you both have experience with larger firms, so maybe we'll get into some of that. But maybe if I start with you, Joe, what do you think about what you heard from Gordon and Ed in terms of there are actually some benefits to being a large advice firm, whether that is your governance is better, your processes are more consistent, you can build a really kind of repeatable and scalable investment proposition, you can deliver more service, the client, I can already hear the animosity in the room coming back at me with all of that stuff. What would you say in response to some of what we heard before the break?
Yeah, I mean, frustratingly, a lot of it I agree with. So it's a bit difficult when I'm supposed to be the kind of divisive thing of, no, I disagree with everything, and I don't disagree with a lot of it. My firm is small in many respects, not just my stature, but it's just me. And I have I'm not an AUM-based model, so if you're looking at size of AUM, it's also low. Number of clients is getting there, because I've only been around for 12 months, but there are absolutely days where I sit there and I go, God, I wish I was part of a bigger firm, because I could bounce ideas off with someone, or I could get someone else to sense check something, whether that's a bit of due diligence or whether that's a client case or whether it's something like that. And so there are absolutely parts of me that go, God, I wish I could be in a really big firm and I don't have to deal with it. Decision fatigue is legitimately a thing for anybody that's not experienced it. But I have worked for big firms, and I've worked for big firms like SJP, for example. I was a paraplanner there. Very well-oiled machine. They do fantastic things as an employee perspective. Everything runs really smoothly, which for me, there's a part of me that goes, I cannot wait until I'm that slick and I'm that efficient, and that's a goal to aim towards. But I've also worked for other firms where arguably they're smaller, but they're also big. So it's not just about the personnel, but it's also about what kind of goes on around it. And for me, one of the things that I quite liked about what they were saying is that it's not necessarily us or them, or it's right or it's wrong. I think it's important that we understand that we need the bigger firms out there to be able to get that message out there to clients and consumers, and understanding what it is that we do. They can do the heavy lifting, which then means that I can go, yeah, if you've heard about that, I can do it, but maybe a bit differently or a bit more bespoke or a bit whatever. So structural integrity, I think, big firms are as far as the industry is concerned. But obviously, being a small firm, I have lots of opinions on some of the other bits.
Okay,
so.
Perfect. And Benjamin, what's your kind of experience of perhaps working within larger advice firms and perhaps the client experience? So what happens to clients who are part of those larger advice brands?
So like Joe, I just run my own IFA firm now. It's just me. It's only me. The client picks up the phone. It's me passing the phone to me. There's nobody else there. I echo what Joe said in that I think the most important thing, client value, are they getting good value at the end of the day? I know it's cliched, but regardless of the size of the firm, that doesn't really matter to a client. They don't know about who owns who. If you're an appointed rep, if you're DA, they just want to get good advice. And as they said in the earlier session, what are they going to pay for that advice? To answer your question, Natalie, with firms I've been at previously, when there's been lots of advisors, clients transitioning between advisors, that's where I've seen client value and service standards slip. Because I think in our industry, we are a people industry. No matter how much we like to think we're doing complex tax calculations and investment management, we are people working with people. And if clients are moved around, how can they possibly build a relationship? With the previous session, the skeptic in me would argue with consolidation, surely there is going to be some ripples throughout the consolidation. Clients are going to suffer at some point, I'm certain. So how could they possibly build up that rapport with their advisor and divulge really important personal things to them when you've just met with them? So some of the clients I've had for a number of years, and it's over time you build up that relationship with your clients. You can't possibly inherit a client, sit down with them and ask them some emotive question about if you were to pass away tomorrow, what would be your biggest regret? Their question would be, who the hell are you? Where's my previous advisor? So I think that's the main concern I have with consolidation and bigger firms in general.
So you actually think it could be impacting the planning in that the client might not be getting a good value from being passed to someone else?
Yeah, I think so. I think it takes years to actually get down into the root cause of a client's anxieties, their real objectives. You just cover the superficial things in the first few years, and I cannot see how you actually would deliver great standards of advice having just met a client or having passed a client around advisors, which is what I've seen in my career.
Okay. And I don't think it got mentioned in the previous session, but one of the things I hear is that the one thing, there are many things that big brands are good at, but maybe one of the things is that they can reach more people. So when we talk about trying to bridge the advice gap, there's a sense that, you know, providers or large-scale advice firms can do that and do that well because they have the resources. Now, Joe, you're coming at this from a completely different end of the scale because you have set up your business specifically to try and bridge that, I think you call it the coaching and planning gap. So without sounding really like crass, what made you think that you could do this when the big brands don't seem to be able to crack this? What did you think that you could do in terms of serving this market?
I mean, obviously, if you guys have read the Lancats, report on the advice gap, there's quite a few different types of the advice gap. And I think it's great what providers and platforms and some of the big banks are trying to do in terms of using technology and making it that little bit easier for people to maybe formalise their goals and then kind of have a bit of a plan on the back of it. But that fixes one side of the advice gap. There is other sides that I think still need very much that human interaction and that bit of hand-holding per se. And so very, very brief background into my firm. Like one of the reasons that I set it up was I was really sick of having friends that were my age in their late 20s, early 30s that just needed a little bit of help, more than, say, Martin Lewis was able to give them online or through his talks or whatever, but then didn't have the assets to go and speak to a standard financial advice firm, for example. And for me, it was like, well, I have that knowledge, I have that expertise, and I have the qualifications to back it. I just don't have the format and the kind of the place in which to do it. So I kind of went, right, well, I'll give it a go and see if it works and do it myself. So I class it as financial planning, but I do a mixture of financial coaching and financial planning within that. And that works really well for me, partly because of my skill set, but also partly because of my experience. And I do genuinely think that there's more firms out there that can be doing it, but I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the motivator behind it. And so because I don't sell myself as an asset-based firm, I generally don't care what clients have got in the bank or what investable assets they've got. For me, it's not the point. The point is there's something stopping them getting from where they are to where they want to be. So I can then spend the time to figure that out. And that's something that I have seen time and time again with the big firms, is they pay a lot of lip service to it, is they go, we've got this really great initiative, we're going to go and do this kind of maybe more non-reg side of things, but they can't make it profitable because they're still using the same systems and processes that are based on the regulated side that require the licenses and the expensive kind of running costs. So to kind of going back to your kind of question of how do I think big kind of firms can help with that, is there is a place for it, and there is absolutely a place for big firms doing some of their work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that smaller firms can't do it, because if anything, we're more nimble, more agile, more flexible, to be able to kind of pick up on some of the nuances that clients have, take that and run with it, which in my experience, big firms are really bad at doing, just because they haven't got the time and the resource.
Yeah, okay. And I guess I'm interested to hear from both of you, really. So obviously big brands exist because clients are going to them. So they're buying into something there when they choose a big brand over a smaller brand. I guess maybe, Benjamin, if you want to just start, I mean, what do you think that clients are kind of buying into when they go with a big brand? And do you think that's actually what they get in practice?
Yeah, I think often it just the prestige, the brand, the badge that goes with working with a big brand. And I've been quite critical in the past around fees that often a lot of these big brand players will be charging to clients. You're getting all the glossy literature. What are you actually paying for is the argument I've given to them. So I don't have physical offices. I've got rented offices I use for some clients. Most of my meetings are online. I say to clients, look, the service you're going to get from me is not going to be fancy paperwork that's coming out to you. That's not where I can give value to you. But having said that, I think some clients maybe do value that. So I think that's where
They want the plush
Yeah,
carpets.
they-
They want to be
yeah.
part of a club.
Yeah, they do. It's kind of being seen, and my friends are with this advisor. So I think that's the kind of what I've seen for some people is regardless of the end service that we can hopefully offer a better service as smaller advisors, we hope. Sometimes that's not enough is what I've seen.
So do you think big brands are promising a service that they're not delivering?
I mean, I don't know. I would say perhaps if they are, sometimes it's not enough for clients to move. I mean, there's obviously a lot going on in the industry at the moment around ongoing services and charging for those services. But the sad reality is a lot of clients don't really know what to expect from their financial advisor. They don't know what means good value. For a lot of the bigger firms who may be just pushing products to them, if they've sold them a pension and ISA, the client thinks they've been given good value of advice because they've got what they thought they'd come in for. So it's kind of that classic thing is they don't know what better looks like until obviously they work with us.
Yeah, fine. Okay, great. I guess what we're trying to get at with both of these sessions that we've had either side of the break is, so there is kind of something happening in the market here where, I don't know, maybe it's kind of almost a two-tier advice sector. So you've got the big brands who are delivering advice in their way. You've got smaller firms who are saying, well, actually, our way is better. Do you guys have a sense of whether financial planning is inherently a smaller firm's game? Is it generally about being entrepreneurial? And if that is the case, where does that leave all of these consolidators who are on the other side of this argument?
For me, it kind of depends on how you define financial planning, because most of the large companies or the kind of bigger firms out there, when they talk about financial planning, they don't really mean proper financial planning. They mean a cash flow and a little bit of tax calcs every now and again, not actually true financial planning of helping be there when a client. I'm not saying that there aren't individual firms that do this within the big consolidators or the big firms, but generally speaking, you meet once a year. So much can change in a year, regardless of your age, but even more so when you're kind of at the younger end of the spectrum. And checking a cash flow and doing a bit of tax calcs and going, yep, your pension's done okay and we've saved you a bit of higher rate tax, off you go, see you in a year's time. That, to me, is not financial planning. Financial planning is being able to hold their hand when they've got the big discussions and the big issues. Or, like I had a client recently who's been offered a really big promotion, really excited, has no idea how to handle the conversation around pay. Because he's like, I kind of get paid enough, but I don't get paid enough for what I think I should get paid. Like, I can cover my bills, but that's not the point. That's something that I feel like I can then add value to go, right, well, actually, let's look at the numbers. Let's see what genuinely makes sense for you to ask for as far as the salary is concerned, and then what the actual financial planning, tax planning, whatever implications are of that. I don't know many big firms that are going into that level of detail with clients as far as their lives and their life events are. So I don't necessarily think that they're not providing financial planning and doing it well. It's just what does that financial planning actually look like? Because my financial planning is, I'll sit in the trenches with you and figure out what we need to do when you need me most, rather than some big firms where it is, we'll see you once a year, we'll make sure that your tax is doing okay and that we're being tax efficient, that we're using your allowances, and that, generally speaking, the investments are doing okay, and if you need us, give us a bell type thing. And that, for me, is where a big difference is in the service that we can provide as smaller firms.
Yeah. Is there anything you
no, I would agree with that, and I think that the value we do add is in us as financial planners. I think the way the industry is moving with technology is it's becoming really encouraging. It's the best time to be in the industry because all of the mundane things are becoming more process-driven, becoming more commoditized. So when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, the value a client will get will be in their time with us as their planners, navigating them through life's complexities, anxieties, whatever it might be. And I think with the way tech is going, I think that does favour the smaller firms, and it goes back to, it doesn't have to necessarily be a smaller firm, because some bigger firms who may have been consolidated may maintain good relationships between their planners and their clients. So whether it's small or big is necessarily not the way to divide it, but I think as long as you've got that kind of human-centric focus at the heart of it, that's where I think we would stand out.
Okay, great. Right, so I'm going to come to you guys in a sec for questions. So get ready to put your hand up if you do have a question for Joe and for Benjamin. But I'll just take one from the online audience. Hello. While you guys are thinking of your questions. So we've had a question here. Are there any concerns from clients about their risk in working with small, or as it's termed here, micro firms? And they then go on to ask about, I guess, the key person risk that sits inside a small firm. So what are the arrangements in place for locum, disaster recovery, if somebody was to die, there's no business resilience there, sickness of the advisor. What's the kind of, I guess, continuity planning when you are having to be receptionist, planner, and everything in between?
There you go. Yeah, it's something that does scare me, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm fortunate that I'm part of a network, so there is an element of cover within that. But I've got locum agreements with other advisor firms within the network that are doing something similar to what I'm doing. I am in a slightly fortunate position where, because I don't manage a huge amount of assets for clients, I'm not saying it's not the end of the world if they can't get in contact with me, because it's still not ideal, but the risk is that little bit lower than if I was managing, millions of pounds worth of assets for clients. So for me, it's about getting in front of that and being able to explain to them that, yes, there are going to be benefits to a smaller firm, but there are also risks. But for me, it's a collaborative relationship. So if you've got queries and questions and concerns, you raise them from the outset and we address them. I'm really fortunate that I've not had this yet, but I know other young female advisors that are setting up on their own, and they get the classic thing of, what happens if you want to have a baby? And you go, I'm going to figure that out when we get there, and it's fine. But, as a lot of people that are self-employed know, maternity leave and paternity leave don't really exist for us anyway, so it's fine. But that is a thought process of mine of going, actually, I make sure that I sort of deal with the objections before they become an issue, and I deal with that so the clients know exactly who they need to contact should something happen. And I'm fortunate that I work with a really good outsourcing admin company where they've said, you go on holiday, put us out on your out of office. So there is a little bit of a point of contact that is separate to me, but it's still very much the kind of buck stops with me. So yeah, it's really, really important to make sure you've got locum agreements and business continuity and all of that kind of stuff. But part of it is, well, if I'm advising my business owner clients to do that, why would I not do it myself? And that then brings in that bit of relatability with your clients as well.
Yeah. And Benjamin, for you, I guess, so the question was asking about clients, and are clients worried about working with a smaller firm? Mm-hmm. Are clients worried, and are you worried about being, the centre of the universe in terms of planning for your clients?
Yeah, so holding my hands up, I have had conversations with clients where they say, yes, I'm buying into you, but it's just you. What happens when you're not here? And I think it's just about communicating the messages clearly to them. So talking about locum agreements, explaining the nature of how we work, that we're just intermediaries and that you don't have any money with us in most senses. And, if I'm no longer here, your wealth continues. And just communicating those messages. But it is a worry, don't get me wrong, as a, directly authorised solo advisor. The other week I had to present my wife with a business continuity plan and saying, if I'm hit by a bus, this is what you need to do. And that was a lovely
Fun
conversation.
Date night, isn't it?
Yeah, she's just about as anti-financial services as you could be. And concerningly, I just realised when we were speaking that my locum is in the room, so there's a massive key person risk here today. So maybe I'll need to work that into the business continuity plan, that we need to be in different rooms. But yeah, it is a concern, and I think that is where there is a tick in the box of the larger firms for that client continuity. I can't argue with that.
Okay, great. Right, I'm going to open it up to you guys. I can see someone's very keen there right in the front. Thank you very much. Just 3 rows back.
Hi guys, it's Heather Christie from BlackRock. Thank you so much for the session. I had a question, not on size, but more just out of curiosity, from what you've said, Joe, a couple of times, that you don't charge based on assets. I'd love to know, how do you charge? Is it different for advice and coaching? And, at the risk of sounding Larry, is it profitable?
Yeah, I knew the profitable question was going to come up. Can I say TBC on that one? Because I've only been doing it for 18 months, so I am waiting for my first year's accounts. But in theory, yes.
What you want it to be then, Joe.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's really profitable. I'm doing it. But for me, as long as I've been able to meet my base costs for the last 12 months, and that's including all of the FCA side of things and getting set up, so I'm pleased in that regard. I charge classic advice, regulated advice, as initial fee, fixed fee, and then percentage of assets ongoing, on the basis that most clients are financial planning clients. Excuse the terminology, this is the way that I've set the services up. So wealth management is classic regulated financial advice. That is pensions, investments, mortgages, life insurance. That is charged the classic way, as in initial fixed fee with a percentage ongoing. My financial planning, which is a hybrid between coaching and planning and is non-regulated, technically, is done on a monthly subscription basis. So depending on whether you're an individual or a business owner or whatever it might be, you'll get charged a slightly different fee, but it's a fixed amount every month. And basically how much of my time you need is how much you pay. So I've got some clients that I meet once or twice a year. We have a bit of a catch-up. They just need a bit of a sense check. And I've got some clients that meet me up to 6 times a year. So for them, it's much more about the coaching and much more about getting into the weeds of things and figuring out how they can get themselves out of debt, perhaps, and how they can start saving for all of these things. And I've got some amazing case studies as examples, if you're interested, of how it has worked. And one of the things I love about the fact that it's fixed fee is my fees are not based on market movements. They're outside of my control, which is really nice. But also I effectively have a monthly touch point with a client without actually having to do anything. Because the fee comes out of their bank via standing order, it forces them to have a bit of a sense check every month to go, actually, there is that bit of accountability of, I said to Jo that I'd get her this information and I haven't done it yet, I'll sort it out. But it's equally accountability for me, which is then going, I've paid you and I haven't had this back, give me a nudge and whatever. And for me, it works really well. But whilst I say the financial planning side is non-regulated, I still treat it as a regulated conversation. So I'll still make sure that all of the full financial planning regulatory process is followed, but it just means that I can charge those lower fees because the minute it then starts going into bespoke financial advice, it then turns into more product-based led conversations. So yeah, it's working for now, but ask me again in 12 months and I'll be able to give you an accurate figure of how profitable it is. So yeah.
Great, thank you. If we could get a mic to the gentleman with his hand up don't know where that is, back, middle. But just before you ask your question, I mean, Benjamin, from your side of things, so Jo was talking there about charges. I guess the advantage of being a smaller firm and, new is that you can start with a blank slate with this stuff. So when you were setting your charges you don't have to go into chapter and verse about them, but were you benchmarking yourself consciously against perhaps the larger firms, more well-established firms, and wanting to provide better value, a different service? How did you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, like probably everyone in the room, I've done the full circle on fees, and I've kind of gone through a bit of a kind of evolution in the last year. So I started off adamant when I set up the business that I was going to reduce the advice gap single-handedly. And I quickly realised if you are going to be a one-man, one-woman band, you've only so many hours in the week. Regulated advice is time onerous, costly to do. So quickly I then kind of started to think about other kind of avenues that I could steer clients or prospects who weren't suited to ongoing client relationships. So I could do a podcast, try and do education materials, regular blogs, all the usual stuff that I'm sure everybody in the room is doing, but trying to add a bit of value to clients. And when it came to kind of setting fees for the ongoing service, again, I've wrestled with fixed fees, percentage fees, fixed planning fees. And I think I've kind of just done full circle and just thought to myself, it's the value at the end of the day. And I know for existing clients that I've taken on board that I'm going to give them a considerably better service a far more hands-on service than they've had previously. And I think clients will pay for that. And if you're going to deliver value to them, then you should be compensated for it. And if they're not relevant to your advice proposition, it's not profitable for you, it's not suitable for them, then you just direct them to educational material or a more of a kind of coaching based service.
Thank you for your patience. You may now ask your question.
Well, thanks. Thank you. It's David Mills at Ridgeways. I've got a couple of quick ones, so I won't go too okay, if it's okay. Very quickly, it was mentioned earlier about clients choosing a financial advisor based on plush carpets or whether they prefer smaller touch. I'd be interested to know to what extent do clients actually choose where they go? Because anecdotally, the firms I've spoken to and the people I've spoken to have typically come from a referral from an existing client, rather than they've gone on the internet and typed in, I'd like a financial advisor. Obviously, the firms marketing themselves might be competing in that space, but most smaller firms are introduced organically. So I'd be interested in that. And just secondly, just very quickly, the financial coaching thing is admirable, and we've looked at that a number of times, how we can try and support smaller clients. Obviously, they're potentially larger clients in the future as well, so you want to build that client relationship early. The challenge, without restructuring your group, corporate structure, the challenge I've always thought of is it doesn't take much. As far as I understand, being non-regulated, non-intermediated product sales, then it's potentially VAT-able. So it doesn't actually take that much in terms of ongoing client standing orders until you become a VAT-able firm, which obviously impacts the rest of your clients. So that's a challenge we've had, and I can't be bothered to restructure my entire group to cater for what I think would be relatively small in the grand scheme of things in terms of our clients' income.
Okay, great. So I think the first part of that question was about, is there a choice? Is there an active choice for clients? Are they choosing big or small, or are they just choosing who they're referred to? And then I think the second part of that question was about the sort of the VAT and the structure of coaching versus planning. So I don't know if, Joe, you want to take both of those first.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that clients definitely do shop around and they do have that kind of element of choice. I've been quite fortunate where a lot of my clients have come through referrals, and most of them, it's the first kind of experience they've ever had of financial planners. And I will say to them, go and speak to someone else. Don't just take, your mate Dave down the pub's recommendation. Like, if you genuinely want to seek advice and you want to get that value, speak to at least 2, if not 3 financial planners, and it's great if I'm one of them, but you need to make sure that you understand what it is that you actually want out of the process. I'm, again, quite lucky that most of them come back to me and go, yeah, we like you, we're going to work with you because we still trust Dave down the pub, which is great. But at the same time, I've been in my previous role, the amount of clients where we had to roll the red carpet out and do all of this extra work because we knew that we were up against 2, 3 other large firms, and you go, why are we rolling the red carpet out when actually we just need to own what we're good at and be really good at it, and that should speak for itself. We shouldn't have to feel like we have to go over and above before the client's even signed up. It's that thing of, for me, one of the things I love about being a small firm is I can be really authentically myself and go, fundamentally, this is what I believe in, this is what I think is going to be right for you, and if you disagree with that, I'm not the advisor for you. Which, don't get me wrong, has been really challenging when you're starting out, being able to go, you're not the right client for me and I'm not the right advisor for you. So yeah, I would say that there are definitely clients out there that are shopping around and that are looking at their options, but I totally also get your point of word of mouth referrals, existing client referrals are always going to be more powerful anyway, but I actively tell my clients or prospects to speak to other advisors and see what they think from there.
Yeah, and I guess, Benjamin, from your side of things, you're sort of not giving clients an active choice because you want to be their first port of call. You're trying to do that education piece for them to then think of you when they need help, I guess.
Yep.
Are you in those beauty parades? Do you see yourself coming up against kind of big brand firms, or is it just that you're serving a different type of client?
Yeah, I mean, I think quite often the appeal in firms of our size is the size that we are, is that if a client comes to you, it's probably going to be a referral from an existing client who liked the size of the firm. So it's quite an easy sell, if you like, to get them on board. And I've had clients in the past that have done kind of beauty parades, and similarly to Joe, I've said to them, look, if that's what you value in your financial advisor, if you want to come in, have a view of Edinburgh Castle, have a fancy coffee and want me to pick good funds for you, then we are not going to be, and that's an interest for them and an interest for us in the long run too. So it's just about communicating your value from the outset, I'd say, and just being fully open with them and saying, this is where we can add value for you. If that's not what you're looking for, then
you just give them a quite nice coffee, not a very fancy coffee.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, Nescafe all the way. Yeah.
Great. Are there any more questions in the room? Thank you.
Thanks. We were asked for a bit of snark, so as an old-fashioned advisor, can I just say, Joe, you were a little bit dismissive of you just get a cash flow and some tax planning, and we just see you once a year. I mean, that is actually delivering good value, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is for the right clients. And I think some people, that's all they need. And if that's what you need, there are so many firms out there doing that, and they're doing it in their own individual way, depending on whether you want the plush carpets and the fancy paper, or whether you want, I don't know, the fancy coffee and the view of Edinburgh Castle, or whatever it might be. And I think sometimes in these conversations we can forget about just how underserved the consumers are in terms of financial advice anyway. And for me, it's like, I'm not trying to say that my way is better and that everybody should stop what they're doing and do what I'm doing. I just think that there needs to be more of an understanding of the fact that it's okay to try and do things a little bit differently and that it does work. And that actually I massively respect the firms that do that, because there are, the tongue-in-cheek, just a cash flow and a bit of tax planning. For some clients, that's genuinely all they need, because they've got other professional advisors around them, and so it is just the kind of cherry on the top that they need. But for me, I'm trying to deal with clients that are much younger, much lower end of the kind of life stage, and therefore they do need that hand-holding a little bit more, because there is that much more noise. You've got Kirsty Allsop telling them that if they stop buying avocados, they'll be able to buy a house. And I'm able to go, no, you can still eat your avocados, don't worry about it. And actually, you can still buy the house, and this is how much it's going to cost you. It might take you 2-3 years to save for it, but here's some actual numbers. Whereas, and I can only kind of speak from my experience, but most firms of a larger size that I've worked for won't be willing to engage in that kind of a conversation. And like, the average age of my clients is 36, and I take huge pride in that, because that is not the norm for the industry. And I guess also my dismissive nature is because of my experience of sitting with those bigger firms, and the daughter or the granddaughter or whoever of a big client comes in and they go, oh, we will literally just do a cash flow and just do a bit of tax planning, but don't give them any more than that because it's not profitable. So, yeah, I take your point about me being dismissive, but at the same time, it's based on experience and trying to help a different market.
Thank you. And Benjamin, just to close really, I'm and just briefly, because I've got a red clock flashing at me, but is there a sense of, do you think small firms can appear large? So do you think small firms can, perhaps with the right tech or perhaps with the right processes, give off a kind of wider presence than they actually are? And equally, do you think large firms can pretend to be small and give that bespoke personal service?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, yes, we can, and I think it's the way the industry is going through outsourcing arrangements. You're outsourcing, as I said earlier, things like your investment proposition, your power planning, freeing up your time makes it seem to the client that you're giving them more time, you're appearing to be not stretched too thinly, which gives them confidence. So I think, yeah, it's all about appearances for clients, and if they, at the end of the day, if they buy into your proposition, they shouldn't care too much how big or large you are, but that you're giving them the right amount of time and service, I guess.
You think the large firms can do it the other way?
No, definitely not. And, yeah,
no, okay, mic drop. Okay, perfect. All right, please thank Benjamin and Joe.